Late in the Auburn game, Missouri made a subtle adjustment on defense that I think could pay big dividends for the rest of the season. Let's talk about it right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And on today's show, among many other things, I want to talk about how Missouri's third-string running back, Jamal Roberts, came through in a big way on homecoming. Not just Brady Cook, but truly a team effort. Jamal Roberts came through not only in the running game, I thought, but in the passing game as well down the stretch. Before I start the show, I want to tell you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And I want to start off today's program with a bit of an adjustment I noticed. Number one, it seems like Tre'vez Johnson has mostly supplanted Joseph Charleston as the second safety along with Marvin Burks. Now, Burks played the most snaps on defense this past week with 58. He may well be the leader on the season for defensive snaps. So Burks, clearly Missouri believes in him. He's a big part of this defense. But once again, Burks, to be brutally honest, was burnt in coverage for a long touchdown pass in this Auburn game. Unfortunately, it's been a bit of a common occurrence for Burks so far this ball game, especially down the stretch when Missouri needed to have a stop. Well, it was no longer Marvin Burks playing free safety. It was actually Tre'vez Johnson who was the last man back for Missouri. It seemed like after that, again, a deep ball over the top of Burks' head for a touchdown, the only offensive touchdown of the game for Auburn. You know, it just seems like Missouri said maybe enough is enough, and Burks remained in the game, but he was closer to the line of scrimmage and where Tre'vez Johnson was the back man once again. And by the way, a good pass breakup by Johnson on the final play of the ball game, sort of to my point here. I think Burks is a guy who apparently brings a lot of value according to the Missouri staff. I just think in coverage, it's been a real struggle this year. So just a little bit of a change up there. Let's have Tre'vez Johnson in the back, maybe Marvin Burks closer to the line of scrimmage, playing more of a box safety, strong safety type of role. That's a subtle change, but I think it could be one that pays big dividends for the Missouri defense here down the stretch if that indeed is a trend that continues for Corey Batoon's defense. Now, in between Brady Cook's two moments of heroism, the two touchdown drives by Missouri in the fourth quarter, well, there were a couple of drives that stalled for Missouri. So the Missouri defense obviously had to hold serve. And speaking of adjustments on defense, I did think Corey Batoon showed a little bit more willingness to blitz, especially in key downs. For example, a 3rd down and 4 in Missouri territory, Auburn ultimately ends up punting the football. A really important moment here as thankfully, well, Rivaldo Fairweather, hey, I hate to bring up Marvin Burks in coverage once again, but this isn't one of those moments where Burks was near the line of scrimmage. Despite this fact, the tight end there for Auburn, Fairweather, beat Burks off the line of scrimmage on a 3rd down and 4 play, but fortunately Missouri had brought extra men in pressure and had just enough pressure on Thorne that he had to rush the pass, ultimately airmails Fairweather, and Missouri gets off of the field. So again, subtle but important adjustments can make all the difference in the world, and I thought Missouri's defense was a little bit more aggressive in those 3rd down situations, at least against Peyton Thorne, and for this week, it paid off. I think Missouri, as long as they're able to, by the way, against upcoming against Alabama this week, I think that's the kind of thing you can do against Jalen Milroe as well. The problem with Jalen Milroe is he's such a large, athletic quarterback. You got to make sure you get him on the ground. That'll be really maybe the biggest key of all for the Missouri defense, is not letting Jalen Milroe escape the pocket and do the kind of damage he can in the passing game and in the running game outside the pocket. Now, on Missouri's final touchdown drive, many of you will remember a key 3rd down and 7 play with Missouri backed up into pretty far into its own territory. Brady Cook spins away from pressure to his left side, and going against the grain, Cook looked pretty spry in that moment, amazingly able to scramble, spin, and pick up the necessary yardage there for a 1st down. But what a lot of people probably didn't notice, a great blitz pickup by Jamal Roberts that made that all possible, quite honestly. You can see why Roberts is the preferred man, especially in those 3rd and long situations with those type of blitz pickups. So a huge play there from Roberts, and also obviously he was good enough as a runner and a pass protector. They left him in to help finish off the drive on the ground as well with a Missouri touchdown. And speaking of that final drive, Missouri just seemingly could not make it easy whatsoever on this Saturday, but ultimately ended up getting the job done. For instance, Missouri had driven into Auburn territory, but on 1st and 10, an immediate sack as a linebacker comes right through the middle of the Missouri offensive line. There's just simply been far too many of those miscommunications on blitz pickups this year for Missouri, whether that's on the offensive line, whether it's on Brady Cook. I think it's been a little bit of both at times. That's just something Missouri has got to clean up, or else they're going to find themselves behind the 8 ball with a 2nd and 18, as they did in this situation. Ultimately ends up with a 3rd and 18, by the way, as Luther Burden stumbles out of his route. And by the way, that's something that happened a lot in this ball game. Theo Weiss later in this sequence, the next series, picks up a 3rd down and 10. Well, Weiss basically slipped down and fell to the ground before getting up and snagging a Brady Cook pass right at the marker for a 1st down. Sort of bizarre to me that at this point, not only in this point in the season, but at this point in the life of the current Faurot Field OmniTurf. No, that's not what they call it anymore. That's a throwback for those of you back to the 80s and the 90s, the Bob Stahl era, for example. But no, seriously, the artificial turf, I believe that was installed new at Missouri last season. Have we not figured out what kind of cleats and footing that we need yet for optimal footing for our receivers at home? Because I've seen that happen far too often this season as well, in particular on that final drive for Missouri that, well, Missouri got it done anyway, but made it a lot harder than it needed to be simply because of a lack of footing. And I got to say, 99 times out of 100, I will certainly trust Luther Burden's open field instincts running the football over my own. But I do think on that 3rd and 18 completion, I do think he made a bit of a mistake there. Probably could have gotten the 1st down, but fortunately on 4th and 5, Burden runs a great route, perfect throw, picks up the 1st down for Missouri anyway. But I have to say, my father-in-law in particular was going, hey, man, run straight ahead, point A to point B, that type of thing. Again, normally I'm going to trust his instincts over the Sunday morning, the Sunday morning wide receiver quarterbacks, that type of thing. But in this particular case, you go back and look at it, Burden does sort of try to jump back and jump cut, if you will, to a guy who is running behind him by about a good yard or two. So suspect, I would say. I think if he turned the corner, there is a decent chance he could have gotten the 1st down. Although, then I look at it from another angle and I'm like, I don't know, he probably would have made it 4th and 2 instead of 4th and 5 at best. So the risk of a guy who's that elusive trying to pick up the 1st down could be worth it. So again, I might question that a little bit. I'm going to trust Luther Burden's instincts there 99% of the time. This may just be the 1% of the time where I'm questioning them slightly. And even then, I'm still questioning myself a little bit. So how's that for riding the fence? I just wanted to address that one play there. Regardless, Missouri and Burden pick it up on 4th and 5 anyway. But you know what? Coming up here on the program, fake injuries. Especially, well, let's be honest, by the Ole Miss Rebels, but by many other teams as well, has become a real topic of conversation over the last few years as the warp speed type of offenses. Of course, Missouri remembers it with Josh Heupel, who's now at Tennessee, but that's caused a certain incentive there for defenses to slow down offenses with fake injuries. Well, there's actually a solution to this. And it doesn't involve a rule change. And I'll tell you what I'm talking about and what I'm getting at here coming up in just a little bit. But first, hey, Locked On Mizzou fans, it is time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. And so far this season, we've pooled more than $20,000 to support the players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go to the specific player you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. This week, naturally, I'm supporting Brady Cook. I just pitched in $100, and I'd love for you to join me. Even $10 makes a difference. Let's show Brady the love and keep him connected to our school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets your team up for success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter referral code Locked On, and you are entered. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return_on-you for more information. Roy, support the players, change the game. So I have to admit, there was a small part of me, and by small, I really mean petty, really is what I'm trying to say here. When Nick Saban got a job on College Game Day following his retirement, I'm going, oh, great, cool, Nick Saban gets another check, everybody, awesome. And I have to admit, I thought the curmudgeonly Nick Saban, who needs him? Obviously, I have tremendous respect for him as a coach, but it turns out, I have to say, as I speed through College Game Day and all the pregame shows on my iPad in the morning, I end up stopping when Nick Saban speaks. I have to say, like Homer Simpson with Ted Koppel, I find Nick Saban informative and witty. I have to admit, I've rather enjoyed the broadcasting stylings of Nick Saban, so I stand corrected. But the main reason I bring this up is because I thought Nick Saban was 100% right on College Game Day when it came to, well, the issue of faking injuries. Because as Nick Saban points out, so often you can see coaches giving a signal on the sidelines to a player to get down, stop the clock. We need fake an injury, grab your hammy, whatever it might be. And then suddenly they're jogging back onto the field a snap later, no worse for wear. So, and Nick Saban's whole thing is, hey, we can talk about instant replay and finding different rules and ways to discourage this type of thing. But ultimately, it's really just on the coaches to have some type of integrity. It really is. And for example, if you think this is unrealistic, I just disagree with that completely. I think you see all types of unwritten rules being adhered to, not only in sports, but in all of society. And if we've gone so far that you just have to take every little advantage within the rule book, even to the point of faking an injury, just having zero integrity whatsoever, well, then what are we actually teaching these young men? I understand we're in the name, image, and likeness transfer portal era. It's not quite the same as it used to be. Well, in some ways, it is still the same as it used to be. These are still young men being coached by older men, college-age young men, by hopefully some guys who know a thing or two, by guys who are generations older than they are. Hopefully there's some wisdom that needs to be imparted here. Well, I'd like to think a simple lesson would be, hey, we're not just going to have total lack of integrity and ethics when we play a sport. How about that? Sure, you could get away with cheating your child when you play Monopoly or something like that, probably. If you're the bank, oh, they go to the bathroom. Well, technically, hey, I could steal a dollar from them or something like that. Yeah, but how fun is that? Where is the joy of sport in that particular thing? And by the way, again, an example really of what I'm talking about here is when you'll see a player on another team is injured on the opposing team's sidelines. Well, what do you see all the time these days? You see the opposing team's trainers run onto the field and make sure that kid is okay. Maybe render some kind of judgment, whatever it might be, render some kind of aid, whatever it might be there. The point is these people, this has become sort of a thing. This has become the culture of college football that happens throughout the sport. Hey, if somebody's injured on your sideline, I don't care if that kid's on your team or not. When it comes to trainers, when it comes to injuries and all that type of thing, we all need to be on the same page. That's the culture of that. I think that's a good thing. And my point here is that's not written in the rule books anywhere, I don't think. I don't believe there was ever an NCAA or SEC mandate that trainers had to look after kids on another team. That's quite literally not what they're paid for. Missouri trainers are paid to look after Missouri kids. But if a Jayhawk player, for example, got injured on Missouri sidelines, do I think a Missouri trainer should help the kid out? Of course I do. I make jokes about Kansas all the time, but that's real life. That's serious. This is some kid's health here. By the same token, if we're going to have that type of integrity, I think there needs to be the other side of it too. I don't want to, if I'm going to be trying to help somebody on the other team, I don't want to be doing it if I'm a trainer because he's faking it and actually trying to hurt my team. You see how this is against the entire spirit of really what competition is all about, and especially sportsmanship. Maybe I sound like an old man here. I don't care. Not everything is old that is wrong, and sportsmanship is absolutely one of those things. And to me, Nick Saban, who's an old man at this point, he's old school, and he's also 100% right. He's the greatest coach of all time. Well, maybe part of that is because he does have some level of ethics here. I totally agree with Saban here on faking the injuries and all this stuff. To me, it's up to the coaches, the adults in the room, to be the adults in the room and be exactly that. Be bigger than all of this nonsense. And coming up, an innovative idea by the Missouri Athletic Department happening on Saturday, as there will be a Missouri basketball scrimmage ahead of a watch party for Alabama at Mizzou Arena. I'll have the details for you coming up after the break. First, though, let's talk about FanDuel, where NFL fans can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch during the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet. That is at FanDuel.com. By the way, I realized I slightly made an error there previously. I said a Missouri basketball scrimmage. No, I meant a Missouri basketball exhibition game, because the Tigers will have an opponent. It's not going to be an intra-squad scrimmage, but at 12:30 on Saturday, the Tigers will take on Lincoln in a preseason basketball game. And then 2 hours following that, of course, 2:30 p.m., the Tigers going to kick off against the Crimson Tide on ABC. But you can also hang out in Mizzou Arena. Check out the ball game. Will be played on the big screens in Mizzou Arena. So a watch party happening there. That's a little bit different. Should be interesting. Autograph opportunities going to be available. Concessions going to be available throughout the night, and parking open and free for fans in all lots. Admission free as well, just in case you were wondering. So unless you want to buy some popcorn or something like that, going to be a free little afternoon for you. So take the kids, the whole family out there. Sounds like an interesting idea. Hopefully the sound will be up to snuff. You all know I'm very much concerned with sound mixing at Missouri basketball and football events at all times. It was good to see Johnny Walker get in on the final sack of the game for Missouri on Auburn's final drive. He got through a double team on that play. Really, Zion Young, we probably could have gotten him as well. He was right in there. You could give either one of them the sack. Really, I think Walker ended up getting it in the official stat book. But I think that double team there may have given us a clue as to maybe why Johnny Walker hasn't been quite as productive with sacks so far this season than maybe we would have expected. Seems like he's getting a little bit more attention, obviously, from opposing offenses right now with Darius Robinson off the roster and that type of deal. But obviously, Chris McClellan's been a really good player on the inside. So hopefully Zion Young, who maybe had his best game as a Tiger this past week, hopefully him and Walker can continue to be a solid pass rushing duo down the stretch here. By the way, speaking of the Alabama game, maybe the number one prospect in the country. Well, we had one of the number one, if not the number one prospect, certainly top 5 last year nationally in the state was Williams Nwaneri. Well, that seems to be happening once again, this time in 2026, though. Jackson Cantwell, son of Christian Cantwell, the silver medalist in shot put and Mizzou alum from 2008, was that silver medal for Cantwell. His son Jackson Cantwell, again, maybe the number one prospect in the nation as an offensive lineman, heck of a shot putter in his own right too. So that's going to factor in possibly a little bit into his recruiting. But right now it seems to be the big boys of college football or who's really after Cantwell, including Oregon, by the way, who has a heck of a track program. All accounts, though, it seems like maybe a Missouri and Georgia race right now, though Cantwell this weekend is going to be visiting Alabama for the Missouri game. So obviously this is an Alabama visit, but Missouri will be able to make a big impression on Cantwell as well. I'm sure Missouri coaches will find a way to at least, just to dap up Cantwell, all that good stuff. Obviously, this is an Alabama visit, but a big opportunity for Missouri to make an impression on Cantwell and obviously the entire country here on Saturday afternoon. And thanks for joining me here on Locked On Mizzou and making Locked On Mizzou your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On SEC podcast available on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm going to be recording Locked On SEC tonight with the SEC squad, so enjoy that later in the week. Always a fun listen. Again, Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to audio podcasts. So until next time, I'm John Miller, and this has been Locked On Mizzou.